Back from a bit of a delay, just been getting through my first semester of grad school. Been pretty brutal, been pretty fun. I'm learning a lot, especially about uh, PL theory, proof automation, and I can go into that in a future video if you guys are interested. But today I'm here to talk about Nix. So if I go here, which Nix, I've installed it with the determinate Nix installer. So this seems like one of the better installation methods. It doesn't have full compatibility with everything. There are some issues with Nix Darwin, but I decided to just keep Nix and Homebrew separate. So when I need something that can't work with Nix, I'll use Homebrew, but I try to push as much of my configuration, the packages that I need, onto Homebrew as possible. So really quickly, you can see that all of my home managers, or all my binaries installed by home manager, including home manager itself, it's all in my .nix profile. And it's all linked to things inside of Nix store. You can see everything that it's installed here. You can see these are all the versions here, all the different packages. They're all installed and linked together in a very efficient way. And I guess my little spiel about why I like Nix is it just makes everything work to some extent. There's a little asterisk there, but for the most part, all the packages that I want to use, all the versions that I want to use when I'm using my Linux desktop or my Mac laptop, I know that I have the same version and that all the packages will work. So it takes some of the headache of future configuration and just offloads it to 30-40 minutes of setting up Nix. I won't get too into the weeds on how to install everything because on my personal blog I've got some tutorials here and I'm just finishing up this post, so this will be ready, and it has some of the installation instructions and then some good links for how to get everything installed. So one thing that I will do if you guys want is I can show how I made this. It is a Svelte blog that I built from scratch, so no templates, but it's very simple, nothing fancy, just wanted something to kind of get my ideas out there. So I'll start with the determinate installer. It's written in Rust. It has some of the more bleeding edge Nix features. I think the main one is that Nix flakes are not considered bleeding edge, so you don't have to enable them. It's not an unstable feature. They're enabled by default, but I opted for channels. It just seemed a little bit more simple to set up. They kind of recommend against using channels with determinate, but I'm not using Nix to package anything. I'm just using it for packages. So it seemed like until flakes become the de facto way to do everything, I'll just use channels for now. Once I start packaging things with Nix, maybe I'll change my mind, but they have a really good tutorial, Zero to Nix, just how to get everything installed and up and running. And then Home Manager. So when I first started using Nix, I was kind of confused. What exactly is Home Manager? Is it a kind of pseudo NixOS when you're not on NixOS? NixOS being the operating system where you configure everything in your Nix config. And essentially what Home Manager is it's a user-specific configuration. And on a one-user machine, it's essentially NixOS for non-NixOS. But you can set up your shell environment, environment variables, etc. I opted to just have most of that in my ZSH, RC. Conversely, if you're using Bash or Bash RC, and then the Home Manager wiki. So there's a lot of good stuff here that's not in the Home Manager tutorial or the official docs, especially if you're using Nix on a Linux distribution other than NixOS. So really quickly, let me just go into some of the benefits of using Home Manager here. So if I go into my config, once you install Home Manager, again, instructions will be on my blog and in the sites that I've shown here, you get a Home Manager directory created with a default home manager home.nix configuration file. And the only reason it's linked here is because I'm using GNU Stow, so all my dot files are just linked. That's not a Nix specific thing. You can see here it's just linked there. But let's go into the home.nix. So the first thing I want to focus on here, and why I like channels, and I feel like if you're just trying to use it for package management, it's perfectly fine, is if you install everything on the unstable channel or the master channel, it means you're getting the most recent packages, or you can use the current version, which I believe is 24.05, which is also the value that you get here with your default config, and you're not going to want to change this. This is basically saying when I first installed Nix, this is the value that it installed with, so it just gives you some backwards compatibility. You have no real reason to change this. It won't break anything in the future. But back to channels, I can uncomment this, and then if I need a package from the stable for versioning reasons, I can just use the stable package here, and then for any of these, instead of packages.treesitter, I could use packages stable, and now I have the stable version of treesitter. So currently I don't need any stable packages, all of the unstable ones work, so I can just keep that commented out. Then we look here, it's all of my home user information. So let's say I had Cade and John as users on my laptop. If we were both using Home Manager, his would say John user/John, mine says Cade user/Cade. So this gives you a way to have user-specific packages, which kind of eliminates the need for sudo for the packages that you install, which is nice, especially if you do have a multi-user environment. The next thing I want to touch on is nerd fonts. So I really like nerd fonts. I use them because NeoVim is my editor of choice. We can see here I've got a little logo for Nix. If I go into my file management stuff, you can see I've got all these icons, and some of these do come from NeoVim, all the icons, but this little toml logo here does not. If you don't have a nerd font, it's just a glyph. So exiting out of this, I can take specific fonts from nerd fonts, and you can use this technique with other packages if they bundle multiple things, and I just tell it that I want IBM Plex Mono and I want hack, and you can see the specific name for each nerd font when you go to download them. So I go here, nerd fonts, downloads. If I go to Plex Mono, you can see that the name that I use here is different, and you can see it's because its reserved name is IBM Plex Mono, no spaces there. And then when I go to my font book, I can see I have Plex Mono nerd font. So it does install the name that you'd expect, but you have to use the reserved name when installing them. And one thing that you're going to want to do here is just enable font config for macOS and Linux. This allows Home Manager to update your font cache and give you those fonts. Just continuing on, very basic. I set some simple variables here just because I found that Home Manager on my macOS overwrote some of my ZSH history. I did not find this on Linux when I installed it on PopOS, and I'll go over that config quickly as well. But one thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to source this file. So if I go all the way back here into my ZSHRC, you can see that I did have to source that, but maybe I did it in my profile, so let me just check there. Just seeing where everything is. Have way too many config directories here. Let's see. My Z profile. Not in there. See what it's called exactly. Sorry for the delay, guys. All right, Nix profile. Here it is. right in front of me the whole time. So I source this, and now when I need my history, for example, if I am trying to use ZSH, I get my history. So if your history disappears when you're using Home Manager for the first time, it's not the end of the world. You probably had some variables that were overridden, and you can set those here with session variables, and then in your ZSH, source this. A lot of the documents say to source this in your profile, but your .profile, from my experience, only works with bash. So when you're using ZSH, you need your Z profile, or I keep everything in my ZSHRC. It's a little bit easier and cleaner for me to just put this there. So that's where I have all of that. And for macOS, that's pretty much it. I have all the packages I want. I know that the versions work. And so far, it's been really great. I have no problems. The only problem I had is one package wouldn't work with the unstable, so I just added the channel here, and I got the stable working. So what's shown in the tutorials and in my blog post will be I can list here. I've got Home Manager, the Home Manager channel, and this is how you install Home Manager with channels. And then I've got stable, and I just reference it here as import stable, and you need these little carets, and then you can use all of the stable packages. So this makes everything pretty easy. If I were to get a new MacBook, this one breaks, I join a company and they want me to install packages, but I don't have sudo on my machine. I have to call HR or IT every time I want to add something. This is really great for just getting my dev environment set up, maybe 30-40 minutes on a new machine. So the thing that I want to show now is how do you do all of this with Linux? And there are a couple changes. I really like NixOS, but my biggest gripe is that some libraries for certain C configs and headers, and if you need like lib something, they don't always get installed in the place that packages look for. So you might need to troubleshoot that a bit. And with Debian systems, everything just kind of works. So when I go down here into the different setups, this is my macOS setup, which I just showed, and then the PopOS setup. So here, the main difference is you're going to need this targets generic Linux enable, and this is in the wiki, but it's not in the Home Manager official documents. And what this does is this just allows packages to find certain things that they need if you're using Home Manager on a non-NixOS Linux distribution. Again, you can see here I have fonts enable, and then this NixGL. So you have to install this NixGL channel, and you can see it inherits packages. So when you pass this in, this is basically whichever package channel is default with your Nix or Home Manager installation. So I'm importing NixGL, and I'm inheriting packages. And what NixGL does is for GUI applications like the Rio terminal, this wraps them in NixGL's default wrapper, which I'm just using the default one. My Linux desktop is just Intel. There's no integrated it's just the integrated GPU. There's no external one, so I don't really have to worry about using NVIDIA, using Optimus. So the default one just says, okay, I'm using Mesa, I'm using integrated graphics. So it tells Rio, those are the graphics to use. If I didn't use this, Rio wouldn't run. It would just fail when it tried to open. But this allows it to be run properly, just as fast as on macOS, or just as fast as if I were to build it from source, because Rio is not in APT, so I couldn't install it in Debian. And this is the reason I decided, I'm just going to use Home Manager for everything. You can see it's much smaller because I just started using it on my workstation, but I've got everything that I need more or less right here, and you can see same thing. I've got my nerd fonts, and especially on Debian where it's a little bit more manual to install the nerd fonts, this makes everything very, very easy. Going down here, I found I just had to source this, but it didn't override any variables, so I didn't have to declare my history or anything like that. And maybe that's because it's using Bash instead of ZSH, and there's some differences between macOS and other Linux distributions. But that's pretty much it. A little bit long-winded, but in my experience, I really like this setup, especially if you want to use Debian. I love configuring, I love writing things, but now that I have no real time, just trying to study, get work done, PopOS is perfect for that. And with the means or the end goal of saving time, NixOS or Home Manager with Nix has really helped me because I don't have to build packages from source. I don't have to worry about package conflicts. I can just get anything that's not an APT right here and it all works. And the last anecdote that I'll show is I get really annoyed by clutter. It just annoys me to no end. So when I installed NeoVim through Home Manager, I saw in my Nix store that I had Luajit. And I was like, okay, so if I install Luajit, am I going to have two copies? Or am I going to have the same copy that was installed with NeoVim? So I went into my Nix store. And I just used FCF to look for Luajit. And I saw that I had it. And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to install Luajit explicitly without giving the specific version and see what happens. And I saw new Luajits that appeared, but the directory size was completely the same. So I believe if I do df here, it tells me how much space I'm using. I use this, it gives me human readable. And again, if you go into more fine-grained commands, you can see exactly how much size, because of course Luajit's not going to take a whole gigabyte, so it's not going to show you exactly what's changing. But I found that for the most part, it's very efficient about linking things instead of installing duplicates. And for someone that gets super crazy about storage space, clutter, it was perfect for me. And that's pretty much it. There's nothing else to really show, except maybe I'll give a quick demo of my blog. So right now, just using npm to run the dev version. You can see here my little dog, he made a couple grunts and noises during the video, but I hope it didn't do too much. A little bit of work experience, and then my blog here. So a lot of my posts, I think most of them except for this, have been published. You can see I've got to fill things out. Right now I just have all of my config. I was using Emacs a lot because I saw that a lot of people in PL were using it, but the headache was just not worth it. I'm so comfortable with NeoVim, but if you do want to use Emacs, this is a pretty basic default configuration that works really well, and then some good information on how to properly lay out NeoVim with Lazy, and then setting up LuaSnip to get some interactive snippets. And that's pretty much it. Hope you guys liked the video. A little bit too long, but just wanted to go over my full setup, why I used it, some of the things I was worried about, and how I felt Nix took care of those worries. Definitely recommend it. With most cutting-edge software, there's going to be a little bit of a headache, but for the most part, nothing too crazy with NixOS, or Home Manager. Sorry, I keep confusing the two. The only irritant on PopOS was it started saying it couldn't find Nix packages, so I just installed the stable channel and gave it a label. So whenever you install a channel, you have to give it a label. So here I labeled the 24.05 channel with stable. If you label that with Nix packages, then you don't have to worry if you get that error like I did. But thank you guys. Hope it helped. If there's anything you want me to talk about in the future, just let me know in the comments. For my academic stuff, doing a lot of work with proof verifiers like Coq, trying to do some WASM stuff. You can see people have already used Coq to define the operational semantics for WASM, trying to take that and write like a little interpreter for simple arithmetic that compiles down to WASM. Hopefully I can make some progress on that, and if you guys want to see a video, just let me know. Thank you guys.